You've got to be kidding me, I yelled. 2022 I've labeled as the year of the reckoning. Everyone I know had their boundaries tested and had to distance or remove at least one toxic person from their lives. And this happened to me several times this year, leaving me pleading and yelling to God. I was just so blown away by people's unacceptable behavior and my lack of seeing the red flags. Now, keep in mind, I've had thousands of hours of therapy, inner child work, energy healing, trauma recovery, art therapy, you name it. So I wanted to believe because of all that work, there's no way I would let my boundaries get crossed. And I would certainly be able to see, all the red flags and toxic behaviors in people coming from miles away, or for any abuse to occur. I only laugh because somehow I forgot I was human who has deep core wounds that will be with me for life. And so do you. All of us do. Some of us have bigger wounds than others. Some of us have wounds that have healed over, but that scar is still there. It doesn't go away. There's still scar tissue that makes all this stuff crunchy and tight and uncomfortable. So it makes it easy to miss the more subtle toxic behaviors and microaggressions and boundary breakers. We just aren't going to catch everything. It's not possible. So before I knew it, I was accepting unacceptable behavior in my life and in my business. And here's how it showed up. Telling myself I need to extend more patience, love, and tolerance to someone who's struggling. Avoiding bringing up someone's unhealthy behavior because I was too tired or too busy to deal with more heavy stuff right now. Convincing myself that I was too much, I was too needy, I was too sensitive, and my expectations of friends, employees, and people were too high. Any of these sound familiar? It's easy to beat ourselves up for what we can easily see in hindsight. When we are standing in the frame, it's just impossible to see the entire picture. All we can do is make a loving commitment to honor ourselves and no longer tolerate behaviors, words, actions, or situations that don't feel good to us and don't feel safe. I've brought on a relationship expert who is a former client of mine who's incredible. I've never met anyone who's better at setting boundaries than Stacey Speller and at teaching them. And you're going to make an assumption when you listen that, she must have had a great childhood and she's just this strong, powerful, confident, highly intelligent woman. So that's why she's able to do it. And granted, those things are true, but her childhood is not what you expected. In fact, it's not pretty at all. She had to learn this stuff. So she was able to, and I'm able to, so are you. And we're all just a work in progress. But you can make some major, major steps today in keeping yourself safe from these people who will drain your energy and life force dry, and we're not going to have that anymore. If you're tired of hearing the same old basic mindset and motivational fluff talk, you've come to the right show. Welcome to Project Me with Tiffany Carter, the podcast, where we dish on everything from managing that crazy brain of yours to manifesting abundance to my straightforward, actionable steps that will make you major money online. Now, I'm not your typical multimillionaire entrepreneur. It takes a small village to keep my anxiety and depression in check. I'm inherently disorganized with an intense obsession with office supplies. Your girl here is a digital marketing content expert who's generated over $200 million in sales. I promise by tuning in twice a week, you will get a much needed refreshing dose of truth, clarity, and cash-making advice. Now let's get to it. Every day, you're either making choices that stack the odds of succeeding in your favor or stacking the odds that you will set yourself up for more self-sabotage and ultimately failure. My most successful clients, friends, mentors, and myself set things up so they have to show up. So the only option is to make it work, and there are no excuses, only lessons of abundance. Set yourself up so 2023 will be different. Not it might be different, not I hope it will be different, not I'm going to manifest that it'll change. Make it so. As long as you decide it will be and take different actions, it will happen, and I'm here to guide the willing. My famous 2-month private business coaching program winner applications are open right now. We start in January. I coach everyone from brand new entrepreneurs making between $0 up to $10,000 and established entrepreneurs looking to scale into the multiple 6 and 7 figures. It's the same application. Swipe up. The link is right there inside the show notes. We'll see if this is the perfect fit for you right now so you get the best results. And we're going to take this thing to the stars in 2023. What up, my people, my posse, my fellow crazies? This is probably one of the hardest guests to book. And I'm like, what is going on? Does she not want to be on the show? But to the point of what we're talking about today, which is boundaries, there is no one better to have this discussion than my client, Stacey Speller. She is a top life strategist and relationship expert. Don't waste her time. Don't try to get free coaching, and don't bother her when she's not available, because there's no chance. Nothing's getting in there. It's not happening. And I had to have you on during this season because so many of us lose our minds. This is when the ghosts from Christmas past come out, like the toxic people in the family, the dudes you broke up with years ago, they circle the wagon. And you were just telling me before we started that why it was so hard to book you, aside from like the fact you're famous, that you are inundated because this time of year, what happens for people?
Well, this is a time of a lot of stress, but then a lot of kind of reflection of, oh my God, my life is a mess. It looks nothing like the way I thought it should look. And what happens is you start being just even the thought of having to be around family or a lot of people can sometimes cause so much stress. And people want help and they want solutions and they don't know how to kind of navigate it. Now, these are not like broke down people. These are high achieving, high performing women who, if you saw them in their day life, in their professional life, they're the boss babes. They're the rock stars. But then it's like these piranhas swim with the sharks by day and then roll over and just go belly up like a goldfish in the tank at night and just let people steamroll them and have their way. And then they're miserable and they're trying to understand what is going on. How do I kind of get out of this? And it almost becomes like a spiral. So yes, I am busy this time of year because this is that time when you're almost forced to be around people that maybe you wouldn't even necessarily choose to be around. And then you let everybody, like you said, the ghost of Christmas past comes back and you get that text from Joe Blow that you haven't heard from in 6 months.
I swear to God, they all come out this time of year because
it's
a
still
high
mad?
pain point. Yeah. I love the hey or what's going on.
You're like looking at your phone like, okay, I haven't talked to you in 6 months. And the last time it was like really toxic and bad. And then just like, hey. And unfortunately, too many women feel like they're obligated to kind of rise to the occasion of that because now he has decided that he wants to make contact. You feel obligated to whatever space he's in instead of just owning your own space. Like, I don't even have to traffic in this if I choose not to. Why am I feeling obligated to this?
And by the way, you guys, I'm well aware that like Stacey's coaching me while we're doing this show. Okay. This is not lost on me. She's done it before. Like that. It is so true that, and my boundaries are very solid and I'm fierce about them, but where they're not solid, where I end up settling or they soften or I make clever exceptions are definitely in my love life. And I would say these people who come out of the woodwork when they see you're very successful, you know, like, and I know a lot of like celebrities and athletes that, so to speak, have been someone who's made it and they maybe have more of like a public persona. They're getting hit up from someone they did one class with in high school, someone from their fraternity, their sorority. I mean, people do come out of the woodwork, and I'm outing myself here. The reason why I feel obligated and guilty, and I feel like I have to reply and give any energy to it, is I don't want to come across like I'm better than someone, or like I'm a bitch, or like I'm above you, like I've made it, and how rude. And I don't want to abandon somebody else who's reached out, because it doesn't feel good for me when I've reached out to people and I don't hear back.
Do you know what is what I call that next level?
Stacey,
that next level peace of mind is when you no longer feel responsible for what other people think and feel about you. Like, why do you even feel responsible for that? If you're operating from a place of a pure, good heart, that's all that matters. Why do you feel responsible where, okay, how they feel about me and what they think actually matters? It has no value. What they think about you and how they feel about you has no value until you give it some value. So it's the currency crazy. That you're giving this currency like, okay, and I feel responsible for how they feel. What? Like they ghosted me 6 months ago, they didn't commit or whatever happened. And now I still 6 months, sometimes it's a year later, I now still feel responsible because I don't want them to feel bad. I don't want them to feel like I'm a bitch. I don't want them to feel like I'm not a good person. Why? If you're good with yourself, why do you feel responsible for that? So
I think there's a lot of people listening right now going, oh my, I don't know why, but they're shocked with your question. But it's like, I don't know why, because I don't do this in business. You mess with my money, honey, you're out. Like, peace out, bye. And I don't do this with friendships. I have done some of this, but I cut it off and stop it much, much faster. But when it comes to like romantic stuff, man, there's like a weird pull that goes on there.
Well, and again, you feel responsible. And then watch this. There's this little glimmer of hope, if we're honest, this little glimmer of hope that if I don't respond, if I don't tolerate, if I don't deal with this, what if he's actually the one?
What if he's changed?
What if he's changed? What if? And so we go down this whole narrative. It's like the fairy tale syndrome of what if? And again, if you can let go of that, because what if is not even part of the story. Because if he had really changed, first of all, a changed, evolved person doesn't come back 6 months later with a text that says, hey,
dying, dead, amazing.
What you doing? That is not a sign of growth. That's a sign of, hey, I want to come back and wreak havoc in your dang life, be a distraction, and have you spiraling out of control in your emotions again. Are you with me?
Oh my God, it's so true. But like, I feel like we can lose our minds. And it's even with it's with family members that I know a lot of people have this, where it's like, oh, my cousin's really down and out. It's always a cousin. I mean, I don't have any, but it's always the cousin. It's like, cousin Beatrice, man, she's lost her job. She's down and out, and she's coming to me and asking if there's any work, or maybe I could work for you in the new year. And then we're taught in society, you're supposed to take care of your family, and you're supposed to da 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 da. And what does that mean if maybe this is it. What does that mean if I say no to this person? What is that? What am I saying that means about me?
It means you have enough self-worth and value and confidence in who you are as a person and how you show up in the world to be firm in your no. You can't give the right yes if you're too busy trying to give the wrong no. And then the wrong no is always going to lead to resentment. Because then let's entertain this thing out. You go ahead and you let cousin Beatrice come in and you find work for her. Well, she's so ill-equipped. Totally messes up. Now you've got a bigger problem. So we end up manufacturing drama and problems because we weren't good with our no. No is a gift. No is saying, I value myself enough to be good with my no. You're not a full-grown woman until you can say no and not even have to explain it. I could look a family member, I could look anybody in the eye and say no, and like, it's just it. Like, that's the level of peace you want to, again, that comes from some serious inner work where you've got the confidence and the self-esteem to not feel like, oh, but if I say no, then what? And if I say no, then my family and this. No.
Because we're attaching a meaning to it, right? We're
attaching a meaning to it.
If I say no, then my family is going to think I don't care about them, that I'm money hungry, that I'm selfish, whatever case we're building, we're attaching a meaning to it.
Right. Instead of it just being, this is not good for me. This is not good for my business. This is not good for my career. This just isn't good. Why do I feel like I have to explain myself? Like, why am I not comfortable enough in my own skin to say the doggone quiet part out loud? No.
I was recently asked by somebody and someone who I'm close to, not romantically, but like a close friend. I don't know if it'd be going a little far to say it's a favor, but it'd be like doing someone a solid. Okay. And this is someone who genuinely, I don't have that many friends on purpose. Like, I have major boundaries around that. So and I don't like most people, but this is like that inner circle person. And what this person asked me in my head was, no, like a no. And I at least got out of my mouth, which is progress. Let me think about it. I needed to buy myself time to like gather myself. So that's a nice little step, right? Let me think about it. I need to, let me chew on that, whatever. That can at least buy you time versus lying, right? And saying, yes, of course, blah, blah, blah. So at least I did that. But man, saying no, you know what I was afraid of, Stacey? I'm afraid that when it's someone I genuinely care about, I'm afraid if I say no, that they won't want to be in my life anymore.
Okay. So again, that comes from that confidence and place of self-esteem, because I'm assuming your no is very valid.
Very
You've
valid.
got a good reason.
And I would say it, and I would say it like lovingly.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you've got a valid no and they are no longer in your life, that just means their season is up and they weren't supposed to be a long-term relationship.
And I'm trying to avoid that.
Yeah, because that's what that does is force you. It almost like forces your hand to say, this person is not for the long haul, because they can't respect your values, your time, your boundary, or whatever it is. Because when you say no, they exit. I love when people self-select out of my life.
It doesn't sting.
Well, it does, but that tells me that season is now over. And I'm okay with that, because there's nothing more exhausting than putting an energy into somebody in an overdue season.
What about
because the people who are meant to be in your life, they respect your no. They don't walk away. It's like, okay, this didn't work for her. I'm still here for anyway. She's still my girl. We're still riding or dying together in spite of that. So the people who are that kind of flaky that can't respect your no, then you have to ask yourself, is this a real relationship or is this a convenience? Because you wouldn't walk away from somebody.
No, I wouldn't at all. I'd be like, okay, like I respect, I respect that. That's what I say when people have said no to me. I'm like, okay,
yeah, I respect it.
I might not like it,
but I respect it.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna leave your life and leave the relationship because you have said no to something that reflects who you are, your boundaries, your values, and what works for you. So the people who can't do that, how close do you want them in your life? How much energy do you want to give to that?
What about the people who say yes or agree or promise something? You could be in a relationship with them and they promise to follow through on something. They promise to work on something. They're saying, yes, I'll stop doing this because you said it hurts you. But their mouth says is agreeing to this boundary, but their behavior does not follow suit.
Well, one of my favorite expressions is a sincere apology always comes with a change of behavior. If they're sincere about wanting to change and evolve and grow and do things differently, their actions will follow. Now, they may not be perfect right away, but there will be some correlating action that says, hey, I want to make this change. I care about you. I care about what you value. I'm invested. I'm going to make this change. Otherwise, it's just lip service. And then the question becomes, okay, set your watch. How long am I going to let this thing linger on? Because there's no intention of really changing. People only change when it suits their needs, not yours anyway.
It's so true.
Yeah.
But some people are so good and look you right in the eye and will say, no, I'll absolutely do that. I see your point. I'm so sorry I hurt you. I mean, they're really good at it. And then there is no follow through in behavior. It's very hurtful to me because when someone seems that sincere and they're really looking at me and then I'm assuming they're going to follow through because I wouldn't look at you and say, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z and then not do it. And if God forbid I messed up and I didn't, I would own it. And it would be a rare occasion.
Absolutely. But again, you're expecting somebody to make a change. They may not even have the capacity for that. So they want to just because they're like, okay, well, the only way this is going to work is if I change. And so they may be sincere in their desire, but lacking in their capacity.
Meaning, this is why when we get infuriated, whether it's an employee, a friend, a lover, whatever, a family member, that gives you the, so to speak, lip service, makes the promise and doesn't follow through. They might not be lying in their minds at the time. They actually believe that they will do the thing.
Yeah, but they don't have the capacity. And so that capacity is a whole nother thing I talk about a lot because it's so real. We do not properly evaluate the capacity of the people we're in relationship with, whether it's an employee, your boss, your coworker, your lover, whoever it is. You've got to know the capacity. And we just want to keep pouring out and bringing our expectations higher and higher and higher. Meanwhile, we've got these gallon-sized expectations and hope, and they're like the half-pint person. And we're trying to figure out.
How are we supposed to know what someone's capacity is?
They show you. Capacity is a shown behavior. It's not lip service. They show you by their actions, their consistency, all of the things that we look for, they show you. But what happens is we create people in our own image where we see them as we want them to be, not as they really are. So that's how you miss capacity. It's like take the blinders off, put your glasses on, and see them as they really are, not as how you want them to be. So we'll rewrite an entire narrative of how they are, like, oh, they're so this, they're so that. And then you start peeling back the layer of that onion's like, well, actually, they're not. That's who you want them to be.
And what are we getting out of doing? And when I say we, I'm speaking like for all of us. Like, what do we get out of this fantasy thinking? They're showing us their limitations, their limited capacity, their lack of willingness. Yet we keep pouring in, like we don't want to believe what their behavior is showing us. Why do we do this?
A need to be needed, social work love. We just want to love people like we're social workers. And so you have to decide, did you really want to be a social worker or do you want to be the dang boss babe that you say you are? Because maybe you're just needing to be a social worker. I call it social work life. You just want to fix, it's like you're just living your social work life. You just want to fix people, help people, get people together, meet their need. You're just in this social work mindset. And deep down inside, it's fueling this need to be needed. Well, I must have value they need me. If I leave them, what happens? If they don't have me to talk to or drain all their toxic crap on, who's going to listen to them? What'll happen? I don't know. There's a God in heaven that cares for them. That's about the best I can tell you.
Are you guys obsessed with her? Isn't she the best? Like, everyone needs a Stacey in their life because she's going to tell you like it is, not like you want it to be. Mm-hmm. And so there's going to be, I'm sure you trigger the hell out of people. I mean, you got to go on her Instagram. There's no one better at one-liners than this woman at I Am Stacey Speller. It's in the show notes. I mean, there's one after the other. Like, you speak in these like one-liners that like smack me over the head. I'm like, you're wild.
Well, but you know what? The truth will always hurt before it can help. And too many people tell you what you want to hear and not what you need to hear. And the like when real truth hits you, it's like, whoa, and it may hurt and sting a little bit, but then it's like, what the hell? Damn straight. Let me receive this so I can show up different, so that I can have the life that I actually want and not just the life that everybody else wants me to have because it works for them.
Don't you find it fascinating with all the people you've coached, all these high level people in corporate, entrepreneurs, these women who, on the outside are like, wow. And like you're saying, in their personal lives end up just a mess and settling for crap, and they would never settle for it in their work life. What is the disconnect? Why are they able to hold these boundaries when it comes to maybe money, when it comes to career, even their own like health too? Usually, it's like, but then it all falls apart in that interpersonal thing.
It's a self-worth issue. So when they're being the boss in their business and at their job and their career, those are all goal and accomplishment related. Like, I can do this thing because I've got the education, I've got the skill set. I'm that girl. When it goes to interpersonal, that becomes a self-worth issue, and how you show up is so rooted in your self-worth. And so that's how you end up rolling over and playing dead for just about anybody and everybody, from like the toxic relative to the ex to everybody else in between, because deep down inside, you don't have that self-worth. So you're accomplishment driven in your professional life where you're rock starring it. And then you get into that personal life where deep down inside, you're like, do I really deserve to say no? Do I really deserve to have this boundary? Am I really worth it? Like, am I worth being able to protect my peace? Yes, that's what it really boils down to. So it's that deep-seated, maybe I'm really not worth it. And like, you've got to be a different kind of person to set boundaries and not tolerate things and not to settle. I don't know if I have that much worth.
And I don't want that to be the case for me personally. And I don't think any other woman does. It's like, well, I think I have a lot of self-worth, but it's like, if you're settling for less somewhere, it goes down to that root.
So there's a root and there's the branches. And I was that woman. Like, the root of it is self-worth. The branches are, oh, I got to do this and say this because I'm nice, or I'm this, or I'm that, or whatever we tell ourselves, or the classic, oh, my faith says I have to do this and do that. It's like, no, there's nothing that says you have to do this. It's all a matter of what value do you put on yourself to be able to have the life that you want in your personal life, where you do put those boundaries in place and you are able to say no and not feel guilty about it and feel like you have to explain yourself and all the kind of, mental, emotional gymnastics we subject ourselves to unnecessarily because of that worth issue. And so the worth, sometimes we've got great accomplishments, but worth is such an inside job. Mm-hmm. Like, it is a total inside job. I don't care if you've accomplished the world and you're like the COO of the $1 billion company. You could still lack self-worth in your inner being, even though you're accomplishing a lot of stuff.
You're so right. And what came up when you were talking is I really believe one of the reasons we resist in stating like a clear boundary, a clear no, or I will no longer accept this behavior or tolerate this, that, or the other, or no, I'm not hosting, Christmas fucking dinner at my house and cooking for 20 people. Like, I'm not available for it. Is I believe we're preventing the letdown of someone not respecting or following through with the boundary, because that can be even more hurtful.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know it's really hurt me when people close to me, when I've said, and I do believe it does take bravery and guts, especially if you were raised a lot of like trauma like I was. I mean, I wasn't allowed to have boundaries. There were no fucking boundaries. Like that wasn't an option. So this was a lot of work for me to even get to this point. And I know when I have the bravery of saying, like, I mean, whether it's in my business or in my personal life, I'll say, you know what? I don't appreciate being talked to like that. I'm sure maybe you're having a bad day or maybe something's going on, but that's not going to fly with me. And, I know how to say it from 1,000 years of therapy, right? But I do still have that pit in my stomach where that person who I care about, they very well could not choose to not respect the boundary or have the capacity to respect it. And that sucks, because that means I'm going to have to detach from them.
And being okay with that, because it doesn't make sense to set a boundary if you're not prepared to enforce it. It's actually more lethal to set a boundary and then not enforce it, because what you're telling people is, oh, I'll say you can't do this or I'm not going to do that, but then I'll do it anyway. So what I say is kind of meaningless. So it's almost like telling people, disregard what I say, because you can just trample all over.
And they'll even talk about you like that. They'll even go, oh, no, I mean, Sandra.
Yeah, like, okay, whatever.
Sandra always says that, but she'll come around.
She'll come around, whatever. And so there's like part A and part B. You've got to set the boundary, but then you've got to be willing to enforce it. And you've got to enforce it because you value yourself enough. Again, doing the work that you're coming from that place of confidence. You're not doing to be mean-spirited, and you're evaluating yourself and doing some introspection like, okay, there's a reason why I don't want to do this, or I'm not accepting this. It could be something that triggers you. Think about all the family drama that gets created because you should have said no to begin with, and you didn't, and you let the toxic relative come to Christmas anyway, and it creates a whole level of drama that you end up having to deal with. And in your gut, you knew you should have said no, but your self-worth made you say, okay, he can come.
And it's like when you say self-worth in that case, it's like, okay, he can come, because the inner dialogue could be, because if I don't let him come, that means I'm not a good person or a loving person. It's that
and
inner
I value his emotions. I value what the family will think. I value all of these other external things more than I value myself, my peace of mind, and my joy.
How do you know when it is safe to set a boundary? Some of these people are incredibly toxic. Some people, when you go to set a boundary, man, they get nasty. And I think a lot of people avoid setting firm boundaries or even cutting these people out of their life because they fear that person's reaction, because it's so nasty and it's so disruptive and it's so chaotic. They think that they're avoiding, the chaos to keep the peace by not doing the boundary.
Well, you have to ask yourself, the exposure is always better, because do you really want to be in a relationship and give energy to someone who has even the ability to get that nasty? Like you'd want to know it sooner rather than later. Because I don't want people like that around me who can just be that nasty because I'm setting a boundary. So you want to know that. Like you're avoiding it. So it's like, let me just keep taking in all this toxicity, because if I don't, then I'll have to possibly deal with the fact that I'm tolerating this. Again, it puts the ball back in your court of why in the hell are you dealing with it anyway? So you're avoiding something that's doing you harm, and you're just taking it in little by little by little versus saying, you know what? I would rather set this boundary. If they're going to be nasty, I can disconnect myself from that.
And how does that look? Like, give us some examples of what disconnecting is. Because I think a lot of us, when we're afraid of doing this stuff, we do the black and white thinking. That means it's like, you're out of my life forever. You know, like how does this disconnecting thing work?
So, like, for those of you who don't know my story, I had a really toxic relationship even with my mother. She abandoned my brother and I. We were 12 and didn't come back for like 20 some years. So it was very toxic, very negative. So I had to really learn how to just get savage with the boundaries to protect my peace. And I couldn't just totally, quote unquote, get rid of her because my brother wanted to have her around. So I just had really clear black and white boundaries like, okay, we're getting together. It's Thanksgiving or it's Christmas. Here's what we're not going to do. There's not going to be negative talk. We're not going to have any kind of drama. We're not going to bring up and list the things that we're not even going to address. And if you're unsure, talk about the weather, because you can't really get messed up over the weather, and find something positive to talk about. I don't even care if it's the plant sitting there, the centerpiece, something. And so just get really clear on those things that trigger you. And these are for relationships that on some level you have to maintain. And then you put a time frame on it, because the more time you spend with someone, the more time things can turn south. So it's like, okay, it's a relative, it's Christmas dinner. You can eat dinner pretty much in 2 hours. So we're going to get together from 3 to 5, and that works.
Being at your house and you just standing up and being like, bye.
Hey, it's 5 o'clock. Great. This has been great.
I would be affected. I would laugh. I'd be like, oh my God, this is great.
This has been great. And because the longer you let it go, like people can kind of hold it together for a defined period of time. But when you leave that open-ended, hey, come over, and now it's like 9:30, 10 o'clock, people have had something to drink. They forgot the boundary. People are triggered. Now you got all this drama unfolding that if you'd cut it off and been really clear, you could have avoided all of it. So it's really looking at, okay, I have enough data points to know this is what happens when Mom, Aunt Susie, Uncle Bob gets invited over, or whatever happens, that I'm going to put a time frame on it, and I'm going to give people the guardrails to make this a successful gathering, and be really okay with that.
When you said this boundary, and I'm sure you've had to say it several times to your mom.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, I want to know if she adhered to it. Number two, didn't anything come up in you where you were afraid of her reaction at all, or no?
No, because at that point I had done enough inner work to recognize I'm not responsible for her reaction. I'm only responsible for mine.
And so did she listen to your boundary? Did she?
Okay, so the first time, here's the beauty about boundaries. When people that, again, these are people that you are going to be in relationship with, where it's not, you're out of my life. It's just, here's how we're going to engage. She had come to my house. She had actually traveled to my house in Atlanta for Thanksgiving. And she went against the boundary. She was supposed to, she was coming. She was going to be there for 2 days, for 2 nights. She, the morning after Thanksgiving, went against the boundary, started trying to bring up the past, went negative. I very politely said, this is what we're not going to do. I'm going to enjoy the rest of my holiday. I asked you not to do that. And so now I'm going to ask you to pack your bag, and I'm going to take you back to the airport.
Dang.
And that showed her, again, sometimes you can show people better than you can tell them, that when I say a boundary, I really mean it, because that's how much I value myself, my well-being, and my peace of mind and my joy.
And What happened then?
She was shocked and she didn't think I was serious. And she went upstairs and got her bag like I was going to say, well, no, it's okay and all that. And we politely called the Uber to take her to the airport and see you next time. What it did is showed her that this is the rules of how we're going to interact. These are the guardrails for us to be able to come together because we are good, bad, or indifferent family, but in a way that still values what I value. I love the holidays.
Did you have people in your family that thought that was harsh and you shouldn't have done it?
Of course they did. And again, there's a God in heaven that cares about what you think. I don't, because I value my peace and my joy enough to be okay with that and okay with my decision. And again, when I introspect, I was kind and gracious to invite her to my home, fly her down to Atlanta, want to have a family Thanksgiving, and she couldn't go with the guardrails, which again, very reasonable. Let's not even drag up the past because it's way too toxic and negative. We need to stay in the present or go forward. And she couldn't do that. And it was going to now compromise who wants to be miserable for like their whole holiday because somebody else is hijacking their joy because they can't respect a dang boundary.
And that's on her. She chose not to adhere to the parameters.
Bingo. And so when people make the choice to self-select and not follow the boundary, they get to enjoy the fruit of their decision. You know, reaping and sowing are real. You sow some crap in my life, you're going to get the crappy harvest.
Yeah. What are some maybe subtle ways that women don't realize they're settling or have like mushy boundaries and they really genuinely don't realize it? And when you've pointed it out as, you know, as their coach or them working with you, they're like, oh my God, I didn't even realize I was doing that.
Well, first of all, you know you're doing well with your boundaries because you have what I call proactive boundaries. If you find yourself in reactionary mode where it's just trampled you and you're all triggered and you're like, what the hell just happened? That means you didn't have a proactive boundary in place where you're already giving people the tools to engage successfully because you've proactively kind of mapped it out. Like, here's what you expect. Here's what you want. So if you find yourself always in reactionary mode, dang, I can't believe they did that. Dang, I can't believe that this is happening. That means that's kind of that clarion call that you need to get some proactive boundaries in place of this is who I am. This is what I value. This is what I expect. This is how I'm going to be treated by anybody that's in my life. And then if you find yourself always having to make an excuse in your mind, and you know, women, we're good at this narrative of, well, it's not that bad. Damned if it's not. Or you can make it work.
I make it about me. I go,
right.
Maybe I'm being a little too, too high of expectations. I'm being too much. I'm being unreasonable. I put it on myself.
Instead of letting them be responsible for their behavior. And so we, like you just said, we internalize it. Oh, maybe I shouldn't, or maybe it's not that bad. Maybe I just need to be nicer, or, all of the things that we tell ourselves in our head to tolerate. If you have to start creating a narrative for what you're tolerating, that means you're tolerating the wrong thing.
And there's a judgment, I believe, we make around this person's behavior. I'm going to give an example because I hate when people like speak elusively and it's like, what the hell are you? Get with it, Tiff. Okay. So I had a situation with a friend who really, really, really wanted me to come. This person seemed very excited to have me visit, as should anyone, because I'm wildly entertaining people.
Of course you are.
Okay. I bring the goods. And once I got there, it was as though, not that I wanted a marching band or a red carpet. I put myself up at a hotel. Like, I don't need any of that. But it was as though like, you live around the corner. Like, no big deal that you're here, like on their phone most of the time. Didn't seem that engaged. And it really, really, it hurt my feelings. And I went through everything we're talking about. I started going, am I not perceiving this properly because of some of my own shit? You know, because I'm very good about self-assessing, almost too good. You know, I was like, okay, what's my part? Am I being a little, you know, sensitive, or, you know, maybe they have something going on in their life that I'm not being. All the stuff came up. And bottom line is, like, that feeling never went away. And then when I went to say something, I waited too long. Okay. I waited too long because I wasn't trusting it. I was like, well, maybe it is me and it's not something to bring up. Maybe it's my own shit and I'm not aware of it. And then when I did bring it up, and I know I did it in a kind, loving, you know, therapy way, ooh, it was met with high resistance. Not like, I don't mean nastiness or name calling, but like high defensiveness is the word. To where I went, oof, this is hot. And then I said it too late because I left not long after. But the feeling.
Why did you wait so long?
Because I really genuinely was going, I've never had anything like this happen before. I mean, it was to the point where there wasn't even a basic guest grace. You know, like, you have a guest come visit you, right? Like, there's certain polite things that you do. And it wasn't even that. So I thought, well, I was doing the God thing. I need to give this person grace. Maybe they're going through something. That's what a nice, patient, love, and tolerant person would do, Tiffany.
The God thing has messed so many people up. And I say that as somebody who loves God, but it's this over kind of need to feel like, oh, I've got to be so nice to the point where now I'm just totally trampled. You know, you can trust your gut enough. Like, if somebody gets you, of all people, who, like you said, you're very entertaining, but you have to be prodded. And you get there and they're like on their phone and acting like, okay, why are you even here? It doesn't take a long time to say something's going on. If something is going on in their life and they're going through some stuff, well, as a good person, the good person says, hey, is everything okay? Just want to kind of check in because we planned this and you really wanted me to come and I'm glad I'm here, but you don't seem to be present and I don't want to make any assumptions. Is everything good with your life? What's going on? Let me level set my expectations. And you have the conversation sooner rather than later, because the longer you let it linger, now your mind is like creating all kinds of narratives and you're playing a mental ping pong. You're like, well, maybe I should say something. Well, maybe not. And you're going through all these gyrations. And there's one of two outcomes. Either they're going to say, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And they're going to tell you what they're going through. And then you can be a good friend. Or they're going to it's going to get defensive and they're going to show you who they really are. And then you can pack your bag and go home and save yourself the rest of the hotel time and everything else that somewhere you don't even need to be. But either outcome allows you to still come out winning versus, oh my God, I just gave up a long weekend and stayed in a really nice hotel and spent money on airfare and hotel, wasting coins, all because I wouldn't say anything.
Yeah.
Or I have a friend who's going through something and I totally missed it because I'm so busy in my own dang head creating all these narratives instead of just asking with grace and kindness, but just asking.
When people meet us back with defensiveness, or they start gaslighting you and saying things like basically trying to tell you your perception is wrong, you're misperceiving. I don't know where you got that from. I don't know how you're coming up with that. Or my favorite one is, give me specific examples. That one, you want to see me get set off. Oh, when people start wanting that kind of stuff. But when that starts happening, it does make a lot of people, me included, start going, okay, well, am I being too sensitive? Am I misperceiving it? So there's people who feed into that with the gaslighting.
You know, I saw an article that gaslighting is actually like the word of the year or something. It's been added to the dictionary and everything. because it's now like such a thing. But there's really nothing new about it. I mean, it's like ancient. It's just like it used to be just foolishness. Like, you're not a dumb person. You're a very intelligent, aware, evolved woman. You know what you're experiencing and what you're seeing and what you're perceiving. You get a guest to come in from out of town that is in a hotel and you're on your phone. Stevie Wonder can see that's rude as hell. Right? Or like you like to say rude AF. Like that's like, it's just downright rude. There's no narrative you need to create around that. It is what it is. Again, seeing them as they are. There is rude as AF to have a friend get on a plane, get a hotel to come watch them be on their phone. Who does that?
Apparently some people do.
No, but it's still rude. And then you have to ask yourself, do I want friends? Do I want people in my life who traffic in that level of rudeness? The answer is no, I don't. And since I get to choose who I give time and energy to because it's so valuable, it's almost like that value, again, being that professional rock star where you're so good, a professional businesswoman, you're not going to get on a call with somebody and let them have a whole weekend of your time and you're coaching them and you're not getting paid. That's wasting your time because it's too valuable, right? Why would you do that in your personal life? That same time and energy is valuable, but yet you're letting this person shred it, waste it. And oh, by the way, it's costing you money for her to do it.
And that's
that makes sense to you in what universe?
Exactly. And this is why I had you on. This is such a problem with so many people where it doesn't even make sense for yourself. It's like,
and again, take the focus off of them and take back your personal power and say, what is going on with me that I even think this is okay? That I'm willing to accept this, that I'm willing to tolerate this. Because as long as you make it about them, you keep surrendering your personal power to their issues versus taking back your own personal power and saying, this may be who they are, and I need to make peace with that.
And that really is a beautiful key point of all this, is making peace and being an acceptance of who someone is. Like you, we both have the mother thing in common, unfortunately. And it took me a lot of years, but this is who my mom is. She will be this way till the day she dies. Very sad, not okay, sad for her, sad for me, but that's who she is. And then I found peace, and then I stopped expecting her to be something else.
Yeah.
But it's getting to that spot, it sounds like, sooner and faster.
Yep. And that's the work that we really do. I mean, that's the work that I do, is you can spend 20 years trying to figure it all out, or we can microwave this damn process and get you to that place faster. Because ultimately, if you're going to have joy in your life, you're going to have to get to that place where you do make peace with who they are. And that's across the board in all your relationships. Like the ex that comes from out of clear blue, 2 weeks before Christmas with the hey text. You got to make peace with who he is. And see him for who he is, that he had no consideration for you or your feelings or whatever he did, whether he gaslighted you or however he treated you. And now he's coming back completely unevolved, and yet you feel like you owe him something. Make peace with who he is. And then it's like, okay, it's just who he is. And it doesn't impact you. But then it's not personal.
It's not
personal. And that's where we get tripped up, because we make it personal as if somehow he is this amazing person, but there's something about us that he's treating us this way. The only thing about you that he's treating you that way is because you're willing to tolerate it.
Is this some of the stuff that you cover in the masterclass you were telling me about?
Yes. So
I'm going to put that in the show notes, you guys. So would you say that's the best place for someone to start? Or do
absolutely.
It should be them applying to work with you?
Well, it depends. I mean, I think it's a great place to start, because you can start that right away. And then that'll give you a really good intro to just how how almost savage I am with not tolerating and not settling. And, there's all this, you hear all this, oh, I'm a high value woman and I want a high value man. Well, you can't get what I call rich relationships in your life, rich where they're full of joy and positive energy and good time and connection. You don't get to that place unless you have a high value mindset. And that comes from that place of self-worth where, okay, the reason I have rich relationships, like I know for a fact, the reason I have rich relationships is because I have a zero tolerance policy in place for anything negative or foolish.
And I can attest for that. I vouch for this.
And so the masterclass really helps you to walk through the process of how to get there so that you can start having those rich relationships. Because too many of us have broke relationships. Yeah, and you and I both know how unattractive broke is.
Yeah, we're not available for broke.
We're not available for broke. And it's these broke down, broken relationships, raggedy, poverty, lack relationships. And, I'm here for rich relationships.
We're here for rich in all areas of our life.
Yeah, that bring you some dang joy and some peace, and that you can actually spark some joy and enjoy the interaction that you have with them, whether it's for an hour or a long weekend or a lifetime, that you actually are enjoying the relationship. That's a rich relationship. I'm not available for broke relationships. I'm not available for broke anything, really. But
as the entire time I'm interviewing her, she's waving around like unconsciously her left hand with a diamond that is blinding me the entire time with has no idea she's doing it, but it's so amazing. I'm obsessed.
No, but that's the truth. We set ourselves up for, and that's part of what manifest is. We invite what we want into our lives, right?
Yeah, if we don't want this shit in our lives anymore, then we've got to not keep allowing it. And she is going to show you how to do that. So when you swipe up in the show notes, we'll have her application to work with her. If you're someone who's like, I'm done messing around, like I need this woman in my life privately. And then I'll also put the masterclass in there. So you're wanting to start that like immediately, get in there and do that. Plus her Instagram, you've got to do, every single thing she posts. I'm like, damn.
Sacrifice to the gut.
If you look for my comments, you guys will laugh. I'm like, okay, a girl got me again. Like every time I'm like, holy crap. So you guys have to go follow her. I hope you loved the episode. Thank you for coming on and just keeping it real and for doing all the work that you've done to be able to get to this point, which I know was a lot of work, so that you could help show us the way. Those of us where, we're still working through some of that shit. And I'm including myself in there. I really appreciate you for so many different reasons. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please write a 5-star review on iTunes. Not only will this make me super happy, but it will allow more listeners to find our special show. Simply help me help others.